I'm John McBride. I'm sitting in the D room at Blackbird Studio in Nashville, Tennessee. I've always loved music my entire life, and I have always wanted to be involved in music. I grew up in Wichita, Kansas, and you don't really think of making a living in music if where you're from does not have a vibrant music scene, if you know what I mean. Met Martina. She rented a room from me actually to rehearse, put a new band together. And that's how we met. I had a warehouse. We had a little rehearsal room. She rented that. We got married in 88, and I think before 88 ended, she said, we need to move to Nashville. She wanted to pursue a career in country music. And me, I love doing sound and Music City. Why wouldn't I want to be there? So we ended up moving January 1st of 1990. We arrived in Nashville, and the last 31 years or so have been a bit of a blur. Within a year and a half of moving to Nashville, she had a record deal, and I was production manager for Garth Brooks. And I thought, in the movies that happens, but not in real life. But it really happened to us. When Blackbird started out, we had one building, 2806 Azalea. At the time, we started with 2 studio rooms, one tracking room and one smaller overdub room. We eventually added a 3rd room at 2806. A couple of years later, we bought 2805 Bransford and expanded that, have 6 studios in that building. So we have 9 studio rooms total here. A few years after that, we bought the room 2801 where the school is located now. When it comes to music and sound, I'm really fortunate that I get to go out and still work on the road, mixing front of house for my wife. And I get to work in the studio and make recordings with a variety of bands, including my wife. So I really have the best of both worlds. I'm a very fortunate guy, and it's not wasted on me. Many times I go, I can't. My worst day is a pretty good day. It's really true. It's funny because COVID really changed the world in a few ways for the better, but in most ways not for the better. We're getting ready to hit the road we have a couple of shows in July, but August we get busy, September, October, November, December. So I'm not really booking anything ahead right now. We just finished a record. It was a personal thing that we did with Martina's dad, who, as Martina was growing up, had a band, and that's where she learned her vast knowledge of country music and cut her teeth, in her dad's band. And I've been fortunate that I've gotten to work on a lot of great records. Thank you, God, Worked with Dave Stewart a lot from the Eurythmics, done Stevie Nicks. With Dave also did Josh Stone and Orianthi and some other artists that are signed to a label Dave has. One advantage to having a studio and having great people come in is that I can go in there and hear what's going on. Let's say it's Massenberg or Phil Ramone or whoever it might have been, Al Schmidt, and you get to steal from the best. And that's a big advantage, really. But as always, the number one rule, at least in Nashville, is that nothing is more important than the song. Everybody knows that, I think, at the end of the day. A great song cures a lot of ills. But when you can take a great song and make a great record out of it, well, 1 and 1 is 3. That's the kind of things that can change the world. I'm gear queer, no doubt about it. I love gear. I do. But the way I look at it, it's really just colors on the palette for an artist, the producer, the engineer. You want to give them every color to be able to paint their picture. That's what really matters to me is if you need a particular bizarre piece of gear, well, hopefully we have it. Some of my favorite gear, I love an analog desk. We have API, we have Neve, we have SSL, all 3 here. We've got a Trident sitting in the warehouse and an old prototype MCI that came from Miami. Anyway, but I'm an analog console fan. I'm a microphone freak. There are particular mics that I can't live without. U47 number 193, 251 number 584. Those mics kill me. RCA KU3A ribbon mics. I'm a big fan of those. I use them for overheads. Oh, Boss Skaggs did a vocal on it, in this room itself, not a year and a half, 2 years ago. And a great mic cures a lot of problems, All of a sudden, you don't need EQ or you don't need compression, When you have the right mic on the right input, at times, it really saves you a lot of trouble. I don't produce a lot. I engineer mainly, and that's a choice. To me, a producer, my definition of a producer is pretty hardcore, They need to be a player. If they've written music, all the better. Creative ideas are huge. Being able to handle a session and be ultimately responsible for the entire record, that's a lot of pressure, Guys like Dan Huff or Nathan Chapman, I watch them at work, or Dave Stewart, and it's mesmerizing. It's really unbelievable. Phil Ramone was that way. So I don't pursue producing, but I love engineering. And the hardest part sometimes is just honestly getting started, because there's kind of a flow to the music business. Someone might start off, they might either go to a school or not, but they end up interning at a studio, then they move into assisting at a studio. One day, the engineer has a flat tire or whatever, so they take over, and guess what? They shine, and next thing you know, they're doing all the work for that particular producer or for that studio. Next thing you know, they've been engineering 5 years. Oh, now they're producing. So there's a natural kind of path that's followed, having the patience and the perseverance and just be able to stick with it. If you have a great attitude, you're willing to work, and you have a little bit of talent, you can go far. No question about it. It's funny, about a year ago, I got a call from a friend of mine, Dave Natal, who's mixes the Rolling Stones live, and everybody else too. His career has been phenomenal. And he had gotten in touch, or someone from Austrian Audio had gotten in touch with Dave, and he was telling me about a mic that he was going to try out. And I thought, man, after hearing the story of the AKG mic brainiacs started their own company called Austrian Audio, I thought, well, it's got to be great. AKG has always been a great mic manufacturer. I'm a huge C12 and C24 fan. I love D19s. I love, oh my God, C28s. They've made so many great classic mics. And so already I had a great opinion on AKG, and I thought, well, if the main force of AKG engineers is at Austrian Audio, well, then it's definitely worth checking out. And I'm glad we did. We used some Austrian Audio mics today on hi-hat, overhead. They're great room mics, even though someone had already set up a pair of M50s, so we didn't use them for rooms. We had the M50s, and those have always worked well for me. But the difference is an M50 might cost you 12 or 15 grand, and, an Austrian Audio mic won't cost that much, which is, you have to pay attention, I wish I could just win the lottery and buy every mic that I love forever. After I talked to Dave Natal, I think I emailed Walter, at Austrian Audio, and Dave had given me his email, I believe. But I told him, we'd love to try out any products that they're putting out, because number one, I feel like we're going to have a pretty good chance of maybe discovering the latest, greatest cool piece of gear or whatever. And Walter told me about headphones that they were putting out, and they were not crazy money. And they sent some to us, the Hi-X15s, and he sent a pair of the Hi-X65, I believe, which is an open ear headphone. I really loved the X65. I just felt like it was not hyped at all. What highs were there, you hear. What lows are there, you hear. I don't feel the curve or anything like that, and honestly, accuracy in the studio is a very important thing. The X15s we put on the players today, not one complaint, not one problem. They look cool. They're comfortable also. I felt like they sounded great. They had plenty of top end. I felt like the X15s had a little more 3, 4, 5K maybe than the X65s. I felt like the X65s were a little smoother. But when you're out there on the floor and playing, you need the intelligibility. I've heard other headphones that are much brighter, but these, they sound pretty transparent in a way. And I love that because I don't want a pair of headphones that jacks the bass up 10 dB, It's just not reality. I feel like the X15 will be popular. It's priced right. It's pretty true across the spectrum, And the funny part about anti-speakers, honestly, NS10s that were very popular in studios are not what you'd want to show off your record with, probably. But as a tool, and listening to them and knowing how they respond, you learn that, and they're perfect. They're perfect for that. That's why a lot of people will take a recording out to their car and listen in their car, because they spend a lot of time in their car and they know those speakers. And so they want to be able to compare. I think that the X15s will be popular, both because of the price point and the quality they deliver. I know the rooms at Blackbird very, very well, and I trust the speakers I have in those rooms. But it's nice to get another perspective. And with headphones, obviously, everything's very close to your ear. The X65s are open ear, but honestly, I'm able to really, really focus on tiny little things. I want to make sure the tail of the reverb doesn't get too bizarre. I want to make sure I'm not having a problem with S's or P's or T's or plosives, whatever. When you're going to take a record to vinyl, you have to really, really, really pay attention to the top end, De-essing, I don't want the mastering engineer to have to de-ess the hell out of my record when it goes to vinyl. Vinyl is limiting as far as physically certain things. You can't have too much bottom end or the needle will jump off the record. You can't have an extremely bright recording because it just won't translate well, on vinyl. But I love vinyl. It's my favorite way to listen to music, outside of maybe live, Oh, I love the fact that I'm talking about vinyl. I can't believe it ever kind of went away, In the next month, we're releasing Martina's Greatest Hits, a 2-record vinyl set. I love vinyl. That's how I grew up, though, vinyl and the radio. And I'll tell you, even AM radio back in the 60s probably sounded better than some of the streamed radio that we get now. I don't know why, but for a number of years, audio quality seemed to suffer and people weren't that worried about it. When an MP3 became acceptable, that was a bad day for all of us. The better quality at which you experience music, the more emotional it becomes. I've heard a song that was just playing on my computer speakers, and no, it doesn't sound like it, But I heard the song and I went, okay. And then I heard the song in the control room and I was about to cry like a little girl, you know? I like the quality. I want to hear lows, mids, and highs. You know, it all matters. There's relationships there. There's emotion there. One of the things I love about immersive, you know, it's you almost have to relearn how to listen to music in a way. But I love, here's a vocal, and next thing I know, the vocal's coming out of the sky. It's really, who needs drugs? It's amazing when you can experience great immersive music. On any given session, generally, the most mics are going to be on a drum kit. A drum kit will usually be from 3 to 15, 20 mics. You know, you need a mic on that snare drum that can handle the sound pressure level. It's extremely loud, especially up close where the mics generally are. Toms, they get loud also. Kick drum obviously is moving a lot of air and reproducing very low frequencies that mics need to be able to pick up to get the kick across properly. The things that are very, very emotional and that matter a lot that are acoustic: piano, acoustic guitar, you know, any other stringed instrument, whether it's a mandolin or a violin or strings. Oh my God. That's where the quality of the mic really shines through. Microphones are probably the most important tool we use because most things that matter most, like vocals, like piano, like acoustic guitar, a lot of those are still mic'd with microphones. So having a great mic sure makes my job a lot easier. And I just can't imagine if AKG mics weren't around anymore, or Austrian Audio now, if those mics weren't available, how much would my record or my project suffer? I just want the right mic for the right job, and those guys build a lot of right mics. The OC818 is a great tube mic. There is an incredible amount of control that you can have over patterns and other factors too. I'm a computer immigrant, so I really don't like computers that much. My kids are natives, that's great, you know? But generally, I like a mic that I can just take, plug it in, go. The 818 is one of those. You know, it's a good guy mic. It sounds great on most things. We used it today as an overhead. We've been trying them out with the school also. And a lot of these kids love those mics. They're using them for everything from stand-up bass to room mics for drums. I don't know that anybody's done vocals on it yet, but it's something we will try soon. You know, the credibility of who built it makes me believe that it's probably going to pass all the tests. Like I said, I hadn't met them, didn't know their music, didn't know anything about it. I cheated. Last night, we set up the drums, and the drummer came over and played the drums last night. That took maybe an hour, and I don't want to hold up a session for an hour getting drum sounds. Might have taken 30 minutes, actually. He was a good drummer, so it all, you know, came together pretty well. I used some of my favorite mics, and we tried a couple of new ones, a couple of the Austrian Audio, which performed beautifully. So I knew what I expected, and sure enough, it worked out well. I like to use an RCA 44 on the kick, which is an odd choice. It's a ribbon mic, you know. I don't want it in front of a hole where the wind hits it, but I put it off to the side, you know, about a foot away from the kick. And you boost a little 50 cycles and cut some 200, and all of a sudden you have a sound that is great. So the drums came together pretty quick. Then this morning, as the players showed up, we just get their individual levels, set up a balance, and in no time they're jamming away. And I love it. And they're, you know, we have a really good headphone system here where you've got 16 faders in the first two channels, are all the drums and bass. But then channel 3, 4, 5 is kick, snare, hat, and channel 6 is bass. Channel 7's guitar, and 8 is rhythm guitar, and 9 and 10 are piano, and 11 and 12 are another keyboard, and the vocalist is in there, a click track if you need it. There's reverb you can add. So the thing is, the better the headphones sound to the players, the more inspired they become. And that's our job, to inspire those players. Well, every time I walk in the tracking room, I want to make the best tracks that have ever been recorded. That's my goal every time I walk in. And I don't care if it's a 12-year-old band or an 80-year-old band. I don't care. I just want to make great audio. You know, that matters to me. I love tracking because you go in that morning and there's nothing. And by the end of the day, there might be a song or two or three that could change the world. What's better than that? I don't manipulate a lot of audio in the tracking process because I want someone to be able to have, here is the true, incredible, non-distorted, non-fucked with, non-EQ'd source at a high sample rate. Now, manipulate it all you want in the mix process or whatever, but if you want pure and it isn't pure, you're not going to get pure. If you want to manipulate it, it's pure, manipulate it to your heart's content. You know, having that beautiful, great, natural sound is very important to me. Great songs are great songs are great songs. They could probably sound bad and I'd still love them. But when you combine, as I said earlier, a great song and make a great record out of it, and it really depends a lot on the type of music. I grew up on rock and roll. I didn't learn much about country until I met Martina. And then she enlightened me. Yeah. And there is incredible country music. There's incredible polka music. There's incredible rap. There's incredible rock. There's bad of all those examples too, of course. But a great song is a great song is a great song. Well, I was fortunate. I got to be friends with Jeff Emmerich. And Jeff was an open book. He'd tell you any question you asked, he'd give you an honest answer, you know. I asked him about the piano sound on Lady Madonna because when I was a kid, I bought the 45. It blew my mind. It just started in and you knew this is serious, man. This is going to be great. And one trick, believe it or not, an AKG, not a trick, an AKG D19 fourth hole up as close to the wood as you can get it, crush it with a 660 or a BA6A or a BA86 or an Altec, 2.7K to taste. Should I give away every secret? Well, it was given to me. I'll pass it on. Absolutely. First time I did that on a session, the piano player about lost his mind. What is that? The piano just goes right here. It's the way you like it. And it's attention getting, and it's different, and it's exciting. It's important and hard to keep coming up with new ideas of how to mic things or do things. And sometimes you find a happy mistake. You know, there might be a particular compressor that's kind of broken, but a bass guitar through it sounds like God. Don't ever fix that compressor. You have to tell them, you know, it's true. I listen to the tone of their voice, the power they have. It's kind of like, I feel kind of like, in a way, that movie City Slickers that had the two guys that could tell you what ice cream goes with what food or what's the perfect ice cream after what dinner. I can hear a vocalist and feel like, you know what, I know the mic. I know the chain that they need. And it's going to be anything from an M49 to a 47 to a 251 to a C12 to an SM7 to whatever. And then, you know what, that one would really work well with a Motown EQ. That circuit, even flat, sounds great. A 660 Fairchild, you know, it's hard to go wrong. An 1176 or a Blues Stripe, you know. It really depends on the tone of the voice, the power, and you know, how they work the mic too. It all matters. But I like a singer, the closer the better, generally. learn how to listen first. And that's something we focus on at the Blackbird Academy, the school. You learn how to listen. And what you'll find is there are certain tones that you don't like as much as an individual. Like my least favorite frequency is probably 3.15K. It just, to me, is kind of like an ice pick in the forehead, man. I don't like it, you know? But I need some there. I just don't want an abundance of it. If someone has a very bright vocal at 3.15K, generally a female singer, I would guess, then you may need to look at a compressor that does band compression where you can choose a spot that it compresses. And when they get very bright, it cuts it out nicely, you know, or maybe even boosts a little low end to help offset. You know, tone is something that generally people either have or they don't. Great tone. The more time you can spend in the studio or recording or learning more and more and more about what you're doing, the easier it'll become. Things that would have taken you 15 minutes to figure out, you now figure out immediately. It goes back to people like Tom Dowd and even Al Schmidt. I mean, Al was a hero of mine, and we lost him this year, and it's heartbreaking to me. But Tom Dowd was having a problem with somebody with peas on a microphone because that air comes out, hits the capsule, and it makes a big, ugly noise. So he took a pencil and put it in between the singer and the mic diaphragm, and guess what? It split the air, and he didn't have the problem. Now, there's a hell of a smart guy right there when it seems like common sense. But it's a combination of common sense and taste and creativity within you. You know, the more you do it, in a lot of ways, the easier it becomes. What I hope is that anyone who truly loves audio and the art of recording and working in a great studio, I hope they find their way here, because this place was built for that tiny group of people. And hopefully they'll come here, feel at home, and be able to create the magic that they want to create.